My name is Margaret Sloan, but most people just call me Maggie. I turned 70 last spring, buried my husband last fall, and tonight I was reminded that to my own family, I'm little more than a memory wearing lipstick. They invited me to dinner, called it a family discussion about Dad's estate, but it felt more like a silent audition for who still gets to matter and who doesn't. I spent extra time ironing my blouse, the blue one Henry liked, and pressed my hands flat over my stomach before I rang the doorbell at James and Stephanie's place. The house was too big for two people and a toddler, all glass railings and granite counters, with art on the walls that looked like it hated being art. When the door opened, no one even said hello. Stephanie just waved a hand toward the kitchen and turned her back like she was in the middle of a photo shoot. James poured wine like he was hosting a charity gala and barely made eye contact. Their son, Eli, gave me a quick hug, the kind that's polite but hollow, like someone teaching a robot empathy. I brought a peach cobbler, Henry's favorite, and left it on the counter next to three kinds of cheese I couldn't pronounce and probably weren't supposed to touch. Dinner was already plated when I sat down. No prayer, no toast, just forks and fake smiles. There were 7 of us at the table, all family, yet I felt like the extra chair someone forgot to put away. James cleared his throat and said something about needing to simplify the trust. I asked gently if they'd talked to the lawyer about what Henry and I had agreed on years ago. That's when Stephanie set down her wineglass without looking up and said it. "You're just the grandma, Maggie. Maybe don't complicate things right now." The words hit harder than I thought they would, not because they were cruel, but because they were so casual. Like she was ordering another salad dressing or correcting a typo. James didn't say a word. Neither did my youngest, Michael, who just focused on his mashed potatoes like they held the answer to all this. I sat very still. My pulse was loud in my ears, but my hands stayed steady. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for respect or beg for space in a family I helped build from scratch while Henry worked overtime, and I skipped dental appointments so the kids could have braces. I just set my fork down, folded my napkin, and stood up. No one stopped me. They barely looked up. I left the cobbler on the counter, untouched, and walked out the front door like I was leaving a party I had accidentally wandered into. I got into my car, closed the door, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. That was the moment it all clicked, not just what they said, but what it meant. They didn't see me anymore. Not really. Not as the woman who raised them, or the wife who stood beside Henry, through layoffs and chemo, and nights when the power got shut off. To them, I was a placeholder, a name on a document they wanted to erase. That's when I knew. This wasn't just dinner, it was a warning. And I'd heard it loud and clear. I didn't drive home right away. I sat there, hands on the wheel, watching the light over their porch flicker like even the house was uncomfortable. And I thought, quietly, firmly, I'm not done. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep that night. I changed into my robe, made a cup of tea I didn't drink, and sat in Henry's old chair by the window, listening to the wind knock against the gutters we never got around to fixing. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Stephanie's voice telling me I was just the grandma, like my name had been downgraded to a footnote. Around 2 in the morning, I got up without knowing where I was going. My feet carried me to the study, the one room we never really updated, still smelling faintly like pencil shavings and Henry's aftershave. I opened the old file cabinet, the one with the drawer that always stuck, and started sifting through manila folders, receipts, utility bills, and tax returns no one had looked at in years. That's when I saw it, a plain white envelope tucked between 2 folders, marked 2009 and Do Not Shred. My name was written across the front in Henry's handwriting. Not Mom, not Maggie, just Margaret. The way he only said it when he was being serious. My hands went cold as I picked it up. It felt heavier than paper should. For a second, I thought maybe it was something simple, a letter, an old photograph. Something sentimental was left behind, like a forgotten goodbye. But when I opened it, there was no nostalgia. Just a letter, a few clipped documents, and the steady thud of my heart starting to pick up speed. The letter was short. Henry had never been one for speeches. He wrote that if I was reading it, something had gone wrong, and he was sorry for not telling me sooner. He said he'd seen the change in the boys. The way James asked questions felt too polished. The way Stephanie lingered near the account books when she thought no one was watching. He said he rewrote everything. The house, the accounts, the land outside Charleston we'd planned to retire on. All of it was in my name now. Legal, binding, quietly handled in the last 6 months, while he was still alive but already fading. He wrote one last line. Don't let them shame you into silence. You built this. Now protect it. I set the letter down and stared at the documents. Signed, notarized, filed. Henry had done the one thing no one expected. He left me with power. Not as a gift, but as a shield. And for the first time in days, I felt my spine straighten. By 5:15 a.m., I was still at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, my hands now steady. The house was dark except for the stove light, casting shadows across the manila folders. I didn't wait another minute. I picked up the landline and called Alan Hart, our family attorney for over 30 years, the one who always addressed me as Mrs. Sloan, even after I told him he didn't have to. He answered groggily, his voice rough from sleep, until I said my name. Then he snapped awake. I told him what I'd found, every detail, and he listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked just one thing. Were there signatures? Notarized? Filed through his office? I said yes. He exhaled sharply, then told me to stay quiet and sit tight. He'd be at my house by 9 with everything I needed to activate the transfer. His tone wasn't just legal, it was protective. Serious. He knew exactly what this meant. When we hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt something colder, sharper. Like someone had finally cracked open the part of me I'd been trained to keep quiet. I made another cup of tea, still didn't drink it, and laid every document out on the table like I was mapping out a battlefield. I grabbed a notepad from the drawer and started writing questions. Who has access to what? What needs to be frozen first? What will make the biggest impact without tipping them off too soon? The woman who sat at that dinner table last night had been erased. The one sitting here now was writing herself back into the story. By the time the sun started to rise, I was dressed. Hair pulled back, pearls on. Not for them. For me. I needed to remember who I used to be. Before they decided, I was disposable. The kitchen smelled like ink and old paper. It smelled like power. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt ready. Not to survive. To fight. On my terms. By 10 that morning, Alan had made the necessary calls. The brokerage firm updated the contact on every account. The title company began processing transfer notices. The cabin by the lake, the downtown duplex, and the condo in Stephanie's name were now under mine. Quiet clicks of a mouse undid years of entitlement they thought couldn't be touched. By noon, the panic had started to ripple. First, a text from James. Hey, weird question. Do you know why the joint investment account is frozen? I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, Stephanie called. Her voice was syrupy and rehearsed. Maggie, there's some kind of mix-up with the house insurance. Did you maybe update something? I let it go to voicemail. Her second message came with more edge, less charm. I think we need to talk. This feels intentional. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat by the window as the notifications kept piling up. Michael sent a short, confused text. Did someone move Mom's access on our end? I replied once. Yes. That was it. Just one word. Let them sit with it. Let them wonder. By 2 p.m., the group chat was lit up like a Christmas tree, full of coded questions and shared confusion. They hadn't figured it out yet. Not fully. But they knew something had shifted, and they didn't like how quiet I was being. Control doesn't always look loud. Sometimes, it looks like missed calls and unread messages. Sometimes, it sounds like silence in a house they no longer own. At 3:20, James called again. His tone was tighter this time. Look, I don't know what's going on, but this is getting serious. I finally answered. Calm, cold, measured. I said, you're going to want to check the fine print on the trust. His breath caught, just for a second, and that pause told me everything. They weren't ready, not for this version of me. The one who didn't cry when dismissed or asked permission to exist. The one who knew the passwords, the paperwork, and the law. The one Henry had quietly, confidently, prepared to finish what he couldn't. That night, I slept with my phone on silent, and the doors locked. Not out of fear, out of peace. Because letting them feel it wasn't revenge. It was education. And class was just beginning. Emily called me just after dinner. Her voice low and shaky, like she wasn't sure if she should even be reaching out. She was the only one who'd looked me in the eye at that awful dinner. The only one who ever helped clean up without being asked. Grandma, are you okay? She asked, and I could hear the tremble she was trying to hide. I told her I was fine. I didn't lie, but I didn't tell her everything either. She said her parents were acting strange, whispering about money disappearing and trying not to let her see their panic. I asked her how she was. She said she missed Grandpa. Said he would have hated how they were treating me. That cracked something in me. Not in a painful way. More like something tight finally loosening. I told her the truth. Not all the details. Not yet. But enough. Enough to let her know that Henry had made sure I'd be okay. That the house, the lake property, and the accounts were safe now. That I wasn't being pushed aside without a fight. She didn't ask for more. She just said thank you. Then she whispered, I always knew they cared more about money than people. I didn't try to correct her. She was right, and she needed to know someone in the family saw it too. After we hung up, I sat down with the stack of documents Alan had left and started reviewing the statements. That's when I saw it. The business line of credit tied to Henry's company had been used just months before he passed. Large withdrawals. Loans taken out under the old business name. All signed by James. It didn't make sense at first. Henry had shut the company down before the cancer spread. But James had found a way to keep using it. Quietly. Illegally. He leveraged it like it was his, taking out tens of thousands while we were fighting for Henry's life. I called Alan. He confirmed it. Said it was fraud. Said we could press charges. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there staring at my son's signature, wondering how long he'd been planning this. That betrayal cut deeper than anything Stephanie ever said, because Henry had trusted him. Because I had. And now the trust we built wasn't just broken. It had been sold off piece by piece, behind our backs, by the very person we raised to protect it. The backyard smelled like overcooked burgers and desperation. Folding chairs were arranged like a Pinterest party, and someone had hung paper lanterns that did nothing to soften the tension in the air. I walked in wearing the pearl earrings Henry gave me for our 30th anniversary, carrying a slim folder under my arm like it was a dish I had brought to share. James was at the grill, apron on, flipping patties like his life wasn't unraveling one frozen account at a time. Stephanie floated near the drink table, wine glass in hand, her smile too tight to be real. Trevor stood by the fence, looking like he wanted to blend into the lattice. Emily sat on a bench, eyes wide but steady, watching everything without saying a word. No one greeted me. No one dared. I walked straight to the picnic table, placed the folder down with slow precision, and said, "We need to talk." Stephanie rolled her eyes. James muttered something about timing. I opened the folder and began laying out the documents one by one. Loan agreements. Forged signatures. Withdrawals were made while Henry was still fighting for breath. I looked directly at James and said, "This is what you did while your father was dying." His face flushed, then paled. He reached for the papers, but I pulled them closer. "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's accounting. You stole from your father's grave. Candace stepped forward, shrill and trembling, calling it a setup. She said Henry never would have hidden this from them. I turned to her, steady as stone, and said Henry saw it. He just didn't trust you to fix it. Trevor said nothing, just picked at the label on his bottle of beer, like it might give him an out. Emily's hands were folded in her lap, but her eyes never left mine. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. James barked out a laugh. Accused me of being vindictive. Told me I was burning down the family over paperwork. I leaned in and said no. You did that the day you put my husband's name on a loan you had no right to touch. Stephanie called me bitter. Called me old. Said I was ruining everything because I couldn't let go. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just looked around that fake perfect backyard, at the cushions I bought, the grill I paid for, the tree Henry planted when Michael was born. I said I paid for all of this, every inch, and you are no longer welcome in it. No one moved. No one spoke. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and turned toward the gate. Just before I walked out, I stopped and looked back. This was never your legacy to divide. It was mine to protect. Then I left them standing there, choking on the silence, while the sun began to set behind the hedge Henry once trimmed by hand. The following week, I asked Emily to meet me at the small yellow house just outside town. The one with the porch swing, Henry always said, reminded him of his grandmother's place. She pulled up in her little hatchback, hair pulled into a messy bun, eyes cautious like she still wasn't sure if she belonged anywhere in the family anymore. I handed her the keys and a signed deed. Told her it was hers now. No strings, no conditions. Just a place that would always be safe. She blinked fast, trying not to cry. Said she didn't deserve it. I told her she did, because she was the only one who never pretended. Later that evening, I finalized the paperwork for the Henry Sloan Second Chance Fund. It started with a modest pool of assets, mostly from the sale of the condo and the lake property. The mission was simple: to help widowed women over 60 regain control over their lives when no one else believed they could. The first grant was approved 2 days before the website went live. A handwritten letter from a woman in Tennessee, whose children had drained her account before the funeral flowers even wilted. I read her words twice, then signed the check without hesitation. That was never about charity. It was about dignity. I didn't keep much for myself. Just this old house, a patch of quiet, and the sound of birds I could actually hear again. There were no more lawyers to call, no more documents to sign. Just peace. And for the first time, it wasn't laced with grief or rage. It was clean. That night, I sat on the porch with my coffee and watched the wind rustle the maple tree Henry planted when we first moved in. The sky was soft. The light was low, and I finally understood something I'd missed through all the noise. I didn't win by taking everything back. I won by remembering who I was before they tried to shrink me. I didn't need to yell or punish or destroy. I just needed to protect what mattered and walk away from what didn't. This wasn't revenge. This was a resolution. And when I closed my eyes, I didn't hear anyone's voice but my own. Calm. Certain. Free.